Hello, I'm Julie Levinsky, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar for ABLE legislation and the Enable Savings Plan. And it's hosted by Joanna Swanson from the First National Bank. She currently works closely with advisors, employers, and community organizations to increase awareness and participation in the NEST and Enable Savings Plans. So now I'd like to turn it over to Joanna. Hi, Joanna.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. As I go through the presentation, hopefully answer a lot of questions that many of you came with, but then once the presentation has finished, we will open it up for Q&A, and you'll be able to either write your questions in or ask them. So I'll go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to go to the first slide here to kick us off. So, hopefully many of you joining us have heard of ABLE, but a lot of times when I speak to groups around the country, people still try to make sure they understand what ABLE is, and it does stand for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and it is federal law that came into an existence and was signed by President Obama in December of 2014. And at that time, once it became federal law, it then authorized states to decide if they wanted to go ahead and pass state law to offer an ABLE account. And basically, as the slide says, the law then authorized these tax advantage savings accounts that allow individuals to use them, and they can save money in these accounts and not affect their SSI and Medicaid. Basically meaning they can put more than $2,000 in assets into an ABLE account, and they will not lose SSI or Medicaid based on having this savings. So as that last bullet point states, these plans are designed to supplement, not supplant, SSI and Medicaid. So account ownership, how do ABLE accounts work? So you'll see Enable at the bottom of my screen and on my slides, and that is because I manage the Enable Savings Program. And we manage Enable on behalf of the state of Nebraska and the state of Alabama. So you'll see that, but I do keep, most of this information is very specific to ABLE itself. The ABLE rules are very specific on how all ABLE plans must be managed. So if you look at the ABLE plan Enable that I manage, or you look at the other ABLE plans that are out there, we're all very, very similar because there's not a lot of room to make changes based on legislation. So we're very similar plans, just all trying to offer the best to the people we work with. So eligibility for an ABLE plan. An eligible individual is defined by someone who experiences their disability prior to age 26. So that means, like my account owners that I work with range from age 1 to 80. The thing they have in common is they were diagnosed with that disability prior to age 26. So that doesn't mean they could be 80 and it was diagnosed years ago, or they could be 1 and it's already been diagnosed. Now, if that individual who experiences the disability prior to age 26 already receives SSI or SSDI, they meet Social Security's definition of disabled, so they qualify. Or someone who experiences the disability prior to age 26 but hasn't yet gone down the road of applying for SSI or SSDI, usually it may be a child who doesn't quite need that benefit. They don't maybe meet that, they haven't applied yet for SSI or SSDI, as I mentioned, so all they would need for us is a certification from a physician, which has to be an MD, indicating that that individual has a marked or severe functional limitation that's expected to result in a continuous 12 months or death. And that is basically what an individual needs when applying for SSI as well. And it is not something that an individual has to send to the ABLE plan. When you enroll in an ABLE plan, you are self-certifying. You check a box that, yes, I meet the definition of disabled, and then we have 6 categories of what the disability may fall into. The individual selects one of those boxes, and they self-certify. So for the certification that's mentioned, if that person or account owner doesn't already receive SSI or SSDI, that's just something that's good to have on hand, have in a folder that's kept with all other ABLE materials. So account ownership continued. How ABLE plans work is that the eligible individual can ever only have one account in their name. So what we always recommend is they find the plan that meets their needs and they open that plan. Now, I've worked with individuals that, as you probably know, some states like Nebraska, we had one of the first plans in the country, so did Ohio. So you may be in one of those plans, and then your own state launches a plan later on, because we still have states launching new plans. And you decide, just for ease of comfort, I want to be in my own state's plan. You can do that. You just have to roll the money out of the current ABLE plan into the new ABLE plan, only allowing one current ABLE plan. How else it works is the eligible individual is the account owner and beneficiary. The idea being that when the legislation was passed, as you all know, before these accounts became in existence, the individual that experiences the disability really couldn't save much money, right? That $2,000 resource limit, or maybe like a $4,000 resource limit. And so the idea was the individual that experiences the disability is the owner, is the beneficiary. The money is in their name. There is a however. First and foremost, however, if the individual that experiences a disability is an adult, over age of majority, 18 or 19, depending on your state, they open the account themselves if they manage their own money. If they do not have a guardian, they don't have a conservator or a power of attorney, they open it, they manage it. They can go online and get the account opened. If mom, dad, or guardian is wanting to opening this account for a minor, then mom, dad, or guardian goes and opens it. It's basically a minor-owned account, and mom, dad, or guardian is managing it on behalf of the child with the disability. Then, if it is an adult that experiences a disability that has been deemed needing a guardian, conservator, or power of attorney, that authorized individual opens it on behalf of the disabled individual. The individual that experiences the disability is still the owner, and their guardian, power of attorney, conservator is the authorized individual managing it for them. And when that authorized individual opens the account, they have to use the paper form and mail in proof of legal status. So proof showing that they have the legal right to be a guardian, conservator, power of attorney, etc. So many different ways it can be opened, and again, for all ages, just depends on each individual circumstance how it gets opened. So Medicaid, it always comes up in managing these plans, and a lot of people ask, what happens if someone has Medicaid and has one of these plans, or decides to open one of these plans? So when the federal government was looking to pass this legislation and decide how do we structure this kind of program, one of the types of current plans they looked at was First Person Special Needs Trust. And so some of our rules in ABLE follow First Person Special Needs Trust. And this Medicaid piece is one of those. So it says if the account owner receives Medicaid, assets in the account may be subject to Medicaid reimbursement upon death. And I always put a little asterisk with that because the sub-bullet points under that really speak to this. So first and foremost, if an individual is 35 years old, they're already on Medicaid and they decide to open an ABLE or an ABLE program, and they pass away at 45, Medicaid can only look for rights of reimbursement for the years the individual concurrently had Medicaid and an ABLE program. So for that 35-year-old who passes away at 45, that's only 10 years. The other piece is that any outstanding medical bills get paid when the individual account owner is deceased. Any end-of-life expenses that are incurred get paid, and any funeral costs incurred can get paid. Therefore, given those three types of expenses, bills that are paid, for most of our account owners, they're not going to have anything left after those are paid. So Medicaid having rights for reimbursement really isn't an issue because it is going to deplete the account. But it is something to note. We haven't had someone yet pass and Medicaid make a claim for reimbursement, but our average account size right now is about $4,000. So once any medical bills and funeral costs are paid, and the average funeral cost being about $10,000, at this point we don't see a lot of account holders having any balances that would be subject to Medicaid reimbursement. But it is a piece that's written into the legislation. So a big question, obviously on everyone's mind, how can I use this money? The really great piece about this legislation is that when the rules were written, it was understood that each individual that experiences a disability is going to have many different needs, expenses, and services. And so the idea of qualified disability expenses was put into categories, not just saying it's black and white. So things like education, transportation, housing, assistive technology, personal support services, legal fees, end-of-life expenses, health, prevention, wellness. But that last bullet point to me is the most important. Other expenses to enhance the account owner's quality of life. What that means is if the expense an individual is incurring goes back and relates to their disability, it's a qualified expense. And really, an individual that experiences a disability, many expenses they incur in their daily lives relate to their disability. A couple of examples that I can give. I work with a woman who has pretty severe cerebral palsy, and she's in a wheelchair. And one item that she wants to buy is a recliner with a lift. So she asked, is that a qualified expense? And I said, absolutely. She needs that specialized, more expensive recliner because it's easier for her to get in and out of. Individuals that are on special diets need special foods, sometimes expensive special foods that can be used for this type of program. Travel comes up a lot. That's probably one of the most common items I get asked about. And with travel, a lot of times if an individual can't travel by themselves and they need those personal support services, or they need special transportation based on disability, maybe they need wheelchair access, special hotel rooms, special passes into parks. All of those things enhance the individual's quality of life and are considered qualified expenses. I tend to kind of make a joke and say the 4 things I know that will not be considered qualified expenses are alcohol, tobacco, gambling, controlled substances. Outside of those, can you tie the expense back to the disability? Yeah, and if the answer is yes, it's going to be a qualified expense. So going on further, so how else does this program, ABLE, work with your benefits or the benefits your loved one is receiving? So the nice thing is the balance in this program has to hit $100,000 before SSI pays attention to it. Basically meaning you can't lose your SSI until your ABLE account, if it's based on ABLE, hits $101,000. And as I mentioned, since our average account size is about $4,000, we have a long time before any of our account holders have to worry about that $100,000 account limit. I say hopefully our account holders are lucky enough to hit that eventually. But the idea is that you can put money away, whatever makes sense in your individual situation, and you continue to receive that SSI and Medicaid. Towards the bottom it says income exclusions. The thing to note with ABLE plans is you still are held to wage limits or wage restrictions if it's through Medicaid or any other type of program, even if you have an ABLE account. So you can't put money into ABLE and then if you're only allowed to make $12,000 a year or $21,000 a year, and you put some of it into ABLE and now you can make more. That isn't the case with the ABLE rules. You can save more. You're still held to any income limits that you may have. So account features of these programs. Again, how these work, these are the same as any ABLE program. There'll be a few items that are specific to ABLE, and I'll make sure to highlight those. But the items on this page are all ABLE programs. Anyone can contribute to an account, which is really a great piece for ABLE. Obviously, we have account owners that work and put their own money in here, which is fantastic. But a lot of times our account owners are getting support from their families. So mom and dad put money in here, friends, family, fundraisers, We've had a number of individuals do GoFundMe pages. I had one woman in particular, one of our first account holders in the state of Alabama, had set up a GoFundMe page to raise money for a new service dog. Her service dog was aging out of ability, and so she was going to have to buy a new one in the next year. So she did a GoFundMe page. Well, it went over her Medicaid resource limit, and Medicaid said, hey, you have to move this money or you could lose Medicaid. So we were able to put her GoFundMe contributions into an ABLE program, and she kept her Medicaid and was still able to save for that service dog. The most you can put in per year into any ABLE program is $15,000. It technically follows gift tax law, and we manage that. So if the account owner is putting in money, grandma and grandpa's putting in money, any other friends or loved ones are putting in money, we don't let the account balance go over $15,000. So it's not that someone could get to $16,000 and be penalized. We make sure to manage that on the behalf of the account holder. Another thing that's very common with our plans, and you see how under anyone can contribute, is trust. We work with a number of account owners that already have trust set up, and maybe they even are currently pulling from the trust for certain different expenses in their lives. The thing to note is with a lot of special needs trusts, they can't pay for housing. That's not a qualified distribution. Crazy as that is. And so what I have worked with some individuals to do is the special needs trust can fund either monthly or yearly, however the trust is set up, can fund Enable, and Enable can help pay for housing. So an individual that's only living off SSI to pay for housing but has a trust, that trust could put money in Enable, and then Enable could kick in an additional $100 or $200 a month and help pay for the housing that that individual, that account owner chooses to live in. So some really nice options there and how trust and ABLE plans can work together. I always say if an individual in their family has the means to do a trust, they tend to make sense. I always say speak with an attorney, but we never say Enable is necessarily replacing a trust. But there is definitely that gap of a lot of trusts have a pretty high minimum. And for those that are maybe putting in a couple $100, a couple $1,000, ABLE plans are great because our minimums are much lower. They're usually, like ours is $50, and that's pretty standard. So you can start an ABLE account with much less money. Contribution options. Checks can be mailed to us. AIP, just meaning systematic deposits at automatic contribution. So once a month, I want to transfer $50 from a checking or savings account, maybe a rep payee account, into my ABLE plan. No problem. Electronic fund transfer, basically the same thing, but instead of being on a regular basis, it's, once a year I'm going to transfer a lump sum into my ABLE program. Or payroll deduction. For the family members or the account owner that's working, you can easily put money in from a paycheck too. But whatever makes sense. The nice thing to take away from this, there's no one way that you have to put money in. There's no frequency you have to put money in. You have to decide what works for your situation, and then you do what's best. The other piece I was going to mention, another form of contribution that we tend to get is SSI back pay. I'll run into a number of individuals who, for whatever reason, are getting a back pay check. And I know there's always been some very specific guidelines on how fast. In the past, you had to spend that. And I work with a lot of families who said in the past, if we got some type of lump sum, we'd have to spend it on things that the individual that experiences the disability didn't necessarily need. We were buying things that they wanted, they could use, but they didn't need them. Well, now this is where ABLE is great. You can put those kind of lump sum payments into ABLE, up to the $15,000, and save it for expenses that person needs. Whether those expenses are occurred a year from now, 5 years from now, there's a lot more flexibility on using it when the account owner needs it and not having to burn through money and spend money on something they don't necessarily need at the moment. Withdrawals. Withdrawals do vary slightly plan to plan. So some of the items on here are specific to our ABLE plan. But any ABLE plan is going to allow you to do a check to the account owner. So a physical check can be mailed to the account owner. That could be then put into the rep payee account if the account owner has one. a check to a third party, you're paying for a qualified expense and you want a physical check to go directly to that vendor, we can do that. We can do that electronic funds transfer to a bank savings or checking account you already have established at your local bank or your local bank. Systematic withdrawals, that comes up with maybe the ABLE accounts helping pay for housing. And so on a regular basis, you need $100 to come out of ABLE and go into your local bank's checking account to help pay for that housing bill. That can be something that's very easy to do as well. Now, the debit card and check writing option is specific to an ABLE. A number of the ABLE plans across the country have them, but not all do. This particular piece is not necessarily right for every single person who has an Enable account or an ABLE account, but it's right for some people. And basically it's one of the options for putting in contributions and go into a checking option. Very similar to your checking option at your brick and mortar bank, but slightly different. So you can use a debit card or physical checks to take money out of your ABLE program. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Account limits. Sorry, this came up a little small. I apologize. As I mentioned, these are for our plan, but all plans are fairly similar. So for us, the initial contribution needs to be $50, and it mentions that AIP. So if you decide to do a monthly contribution, it doesn't have to be $50 a month. You could do $25 a month. You just have to maintain with our plan a $50 minimum account balance because our annual fee for our program is $45. And again, every plan's annual fee is pretty similar. We vary within $5 or $10 of each other. Tax advantages. So when ABLE plans were created, they had to, they're tax codes, so they had to be written into the tax code. So the federal government had to decide where in the tax code do we put this. And the easiest place to put it was 529. And if you're familiar, 529 are college savings programs. So sometimes you'll hear ABLE plans referred to as 529A. Well, some of the ABLE rules follow 529 college savings plans. And one of those is the tax-deferred growth. The nice thing is if you put money into this program and you choose an investment option where there is growth in that investment option, you don't pay taxes on it. Like if you opened up a brokerage account with TD Ameritrade and you had a great year last year because markets were on fire last year, you get that tax statement, this time now, and if your account made $40, you got to pay taxes on it. That's not how it works in ABLE programs. Each year that you make money, you don't have to pay taxes on that growth. As long as you use the money for a qualified expense, a disability-related expense, you don't have to pay taxes on the growth, which is a nice benefit. It's probably a little bit bigger benefit in college savings, but I always think it's a nice add-on for those that are saving for long-term expenses, like an adaptive car or a service dog, something that's going to take 3, 5, 10 years to save for or more. Contributors other than the account owner can take advantage of estate tax benefits. What that basically means is what we try to encourage mom, dad, grandpa, grandma. They want to gift grandchildren, family members money. An ABLE plan can be a great place to do so. They're moving money out of their taxable estate and moving it into something that benefits a loved one. So investment options. Where do you put the money once you open an ABLE program? Now again, these are a little specific to Enable, but we have analyzed all ABLE programs. We all talk to each other. There's not a lot of us, so we're all pretty close. And again, you won't see a lot of differences between what we do in an ABLE and what you're going to see in other ABLE plans. So how we have it is we have 3 target risk options. These are investment options. Again, these are great for that savings goal you have that may be 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road, or farther. You have that long-term goal you're saving for. We have the bank savings option, very similar to putting the money into your bank savings account at your brick-and-mortar bank. FDIC insurance up to $250,000. It's not going to make a lot of money, but you don't have to worry about volatility. It just sits there, and you're keeping it in a nice, safe place that keeps it away from resource limits from Medicaid and SSI. And then you have the checking option. Again, it's similar to a checking option that you have at your brick and mortar bank. It's a little different because it's built specifically into Enable. There's specific check, specific debit card that goes with that. You can't do online bill pay with this account like you can your brick and mortar checking account, but it does give you that debit card check writing option. So if you have expenses you feel you need more easy access to the money, this can be a nice option. Like one of my account holders who is wheelchair bound uses our local city's wheelchair accessible bus, and she has to write a check for her bus ticket. So she ended up getting a checkbook just so she can buy those regular bus tickets as needed. So that can sometimes be a nice reason for something like this. When you open any ABLE account, you decide where the money goes. You may decide 100% goes into bank savings. Or you may say, you know, I want some of this money for this long-term expense that I need 5 years from now, and I want the rest of it in just an easy bank saving or checking option. So you could do 50% in that growth option and 50% in the bank savings option. It's really up to you. There's no one way anyone has to invest this money. You can just decide what makes sense for you. And basically how it works is that balance that you have in there, you can change that twice per year. So you put in, let's say, $1,000 into your account. You can change how that $1,000 is invested 2 times per year. Any new money that goes in, though, you can always change how that's invested. So let's say you have a lump sum in the bank savings option, but down the road you have a new contribution that goes in and you want to put it into the checking option. You can always put new money in however you want. So there's lots of ways to do it, and you can always talk to us or any plan about how you want to contribute. We're always here to kind of help you with that. This slide goes into our specific target risk options, breaking out growth versus moderate versus conservative. Basically, how it works is that growth, meaning I want to take more advantage of the market, so I'm more heavily in stocks and a little bit in bonds. Moderate is still pretty heavy in stocks, but more bonds and adding a little cash. And conservative, is some stocks, more bonds, and more cash. If this is something that's of interest to you, you can always go on our website, and all the nitty-gritty details of these Vanguard funds are available. All ABLE plans have something similar to this, and all have very specific details on their website. So you can always research historical prices, rate of return, how do they perform against their benchmark. All of that's always on an ABLE Program Manager's website. Account fees. Now again, this is going to be specific to Enable. Again, we are pretty similar to our counterparts that are out there. We follow exactly to some of the plans, but just as you decide which plan's best for you, again, that plan's website or program disclosure document will always have this in very specific detail. So for Enable, we have a $45 annual fee to manage the plan. We charge it quarterly. Because these are considered investments accounts, everything we do is quarter-based. Like you have a 401k, everything you get on a quarterly basis. So we charge $11.25 per quarter, and you always see that as a line item online or on your statement. Total asset-based fees, sometimes I always feel like these are more confusing than helpful, but if you're in the Vanguard fund, like any mutual fund, they have asset-based fees that are taken out before return. So meaning if you decided to do that Growth Vanguard option, and it says at the end of 2017 your Vanguard Growth Fund made 10%, you actually made 10.5% because the 0.5 is taken out on the back end. Now for our specific checking option, if you decide to go with a checkbook, we do have a $6 fee for a box of 50 checks, but you don't have to use checks. That's very up to the individual using the account and do they need it. And the debit card comes with it automatically. That's free, so you don't have to pay for that. And again, if you want more specifics on our particular checking option, about the checkbook, the debit card, etc., that's all on the website and in our program disclosure document. And there are no other fees outside of what's listed on here. Open an account. So every ABLE program is going to have a program disclosure document. That's basically our legal document with every nitty-gritty piece of information you'd ever want to know about a program. Basically what the lawyers put together. To enroll, really all ABLE programs are fairly similar. And I will say it is fairly easy to enroll. A lot of times you may have some questions up front that you feel like you need to get answered before you're ready to enroll. But once you feel like you have your questions answered, really what you need is, for the account owner, we need their name, address, date of birth, social security number. If there is an authorized individual, we need their name, address, social security number, date of birth. If there's an authorized individual, we need the legal paperwork proving that they have legal authority. You decide, how do I want to invest? How do I want to fund? How am I going to contribute? One time, monthly, whatever it might be. That can always change. When it says select delivery options, that means for your information, statement, account balance, etc. Do you want that mailed to you? Do you want it emailed to you? We can do either. We can do both. Everyone's different, so you decide what's best for you. And then honestly, if you're going online, you just fill all that out, submit, and you're ready to go. Sometimes our paper enrollment forms are a little more intensive because they ask a lot more questions, but the questions aren't necessarily applicable to everyone. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get through a paper enrollment form just because you have to decide which sections are applicable to you in your situation. But I always tell families it honestly takes about 20 minutes to enroll in the program, whether you go online or through paper. It's just, again, once you have those pieces of information that are listed here, if you have them, it's pretty quick. So that's really what it takes to get started. It is fairly easy. Once you're comfortable with it, you can get enrolled pretty quickly. For our Enable program, enablesavings.com is our website. We do a lot of blogs. We work with a lot of account owners to tell their story. Why are they using an ABLE program? Why are they using our Enable program? Why does the program make sense for them? How are they spending their money? What are they saving for? We do a lot of those same stories on our Facebook page, and we have a wonderful customer service center. All ABLE plans will have a customer service center. It's always on their website. And the nice thing is, if you have those questions, you have those specific questions, you need someone to walk you through the enrollment process, our customer service centers are there for you. They're there to help you out. And with our ABLE programs, our customer service centers know that sometimes the questions you have with an ABLE program are pretty in-depth. You're talking about very important things, such as SSI and Medicaid and benefits, and they understand that sometimes a call center conversation with ABLE can take 15, 20, 30 minutes, and they're prepared for that. So just always feel free to call them and always feel free to know that they're going to help. Now, because I'm a registered individual talking about investment products, I always have to show some disclosures, so bear with me. This disclosure is for an ABLE in particular. We are a Nebraska-based ABLE program. So this just shows how our program is structured. Our ABLE program got signed into law in May of 2015, and we went live in June of 2016. Florida, Ohio, and Nebraska were the first 3 plans to go live in June of 2016, but there are now 30 states offering plans. And then this is just my last page of legal disclosure that I have to promise compliance that I show everyone. So I'll go back to the more important informational page. The other thing I want to point out, too, is that NDI, National Disability Institute, has started in the NRC, the ABLE NRC, and they're one of the best resources for looking up ABLE programs. So obviously I'm biased towards our Enable program, but depending on where you live, you probably want to understand what is your state doing, what legislation is passed, have they opened an Enable account. And the ABLE NRC, their website has all that information. You can click on a map and click on your state or the state that you're concerned with, and it will tell you what's going on with that state and with ABLE. So I highly recommend checking that out because really with our ABLE program, we believe that we're here to service the individuals that can use the program, and we really support each other in the ABLE world. So we're never going to try to push you into one program over the other. We want our account owners to be in the best program that makes sense for them. So working with organizations like NDI and National Down Syndrome Society and the Christopher Reeve Foundation all help us make sure we just tell a good ABLE story across our country. Now I'm going to open it up. I think we can take questions now. I do see some questions down below that people have been asking, so I'm going to get to those first since they already put them out there. One question that came up is, do you need to keep records of what you buy? And my first answer is yes. And everyone asks for how long. And so first and foremost, when you take a withdrawal from an ABLE program, and that's whether it's ours or any ABLE program, you don't have to prove it to us that it's a qualified disability expense. We will ask you, is it qualified? You'll either tell us verbally by phone, yes, or check a box online, yes. But besides that, we say keep your receipts, because technically who has authority over these programs is IRS. So if you were to be audited by the IRS and they saw you had an ABLE program and you took a distribution, you'd want to prove that it was a qualified distribution. Now, on the flip side, we do not see the IRS getting into the business of auditing ABLE accounts. That's going to be very unlikely. What I tell most people is that if you're on SSI and Medicaid or one of the programs, and if your state requires reporting of your ABLE account and they see you take a withdrawal and they ask you what it's for, you'd want to be able to show it to them. And so the next question I tend to get is, how long should I keep my record of receipt? Since standard IRS says 7 years, I always say follow 7 years. It's just easier. Keep a folder. Anything that involves ABLE, stick it in that folder. That way you're always covered. Whoever is asking, Medicaid, IRS, whoever, you just know if anyone should ever ask about your ABLE account, you have the proof of how you're using it, spending it, and saving with it. I did get a question that someone became disabled at 27. For any ABLE program, disability has to be diagnosed prior to 26th birthday. So if you did not become or be considered disabled prior to your 26th birthday, at this time you do not qualify for ABLE. There is legislation out there where the industry is trying to push it to change it to 46, but we haven't quite got there yet. We're hoping maybe that's something that comes down the pipe in a few years, but at this point it is disabled prior to the 26th birthday. Let's see, I'm going to look and I have some more questions up here, but I want to make sure all those individuals that have questions, make sure you get answers. One question we got asked was, can you put equities into an ABLE account? And you cannot put any other type of investments, IRAs, equities, minor-owned accounts into this account. Only thing that can be accepted into any ABLE plan is a electronic funds transfer or a physical check. So if you have equities, you have investment accounts, they would have to be liquidated, the money put into a already established checking or savings account, and the withdrawal would have to be made from that checking or savings account and then transferred into an ABLE program. One piece, though, of new contribution that was passed with our tax plan in 2017 was rollovers from 529 college savings programs. So if an individual had a 529 college savings program and for whatever reason decided that's not going to be the best use of this money, that an ABLE program is a better use of that money because maybe I don't need that much money for education, it can be rolled over into an ABLE program. Now, I need to put an asterisk by that because that became federal law with passing of the tax bill, but as you probably heard with a lot of our tax issues, that because it's federal law doesn't mean we can turn around and implement it really quickly. So there are 4 major back office providers for ABLE programs, and we are all working to institute this rollover ability. It will happen sooner rather than later, that the ability to do the rollover will be there, but no ABLE program has that ability right at this moment. So know if you have those 529 college savings funds and you wanted to move them into ABLE, you will be able to do so. I would assume sometime this year, but they just can't do it yet. So we're working on it, working very diligently because we think it's very important. Someone asked about tax bracket, does my income matter? And that is the wonderful thing about ABLE is no, it does not matter what tax bracket you're in. It just matters that you have a desire to contribute, that the account owner qualifies based on onset of disability prior to 26th birthday. So if anyone, like I said earlier, wants to put in $50, $100, or the max of $15,000, they can do so. That is a very nice part about these programs, which also follows college savings law, that income is not a factor, which we love. That means it's open to everyone. Let's see. And again, someone asked about the $2,000, and I'll make sure I just reiterate that because that is so important. If the money that goes into ABLE, for lack of a better word, is sheltered from resource limit. So you can have $10,000 in these accounts, or maybe you have them year after year and you accumulate up to $30,000 in these accounts. You can go past the $2,000 resource limit as long as the money is in ABLE. And you can, if you have an ABLE program, the money has to be in ABLE. So if you have an ABLE program, but your checking account balance gets to $3,000, you will be over-resourced. So the idea is when your checking or savings account gets close to that $2,000 resource limit, use ABLE to transfer the money out of that checking or savings account and move it into ABLE so you are not considered over-resourced and you do not lose your benefits. Because obviously that is huge and very, very important. To reiterate, the website that is so helpful for analysis of all national ABLE programs, it's put on by NDI, National Disability Institute, and it is the ABLE NRC. So it's ABLE-NRC. And if you Google that, it'll pop up. I don't know if it's .org. I can't remember exactly what the web address is, but I always find it by putting ABLE NRC into Google. And again, wonderful website, very helpful, not biased in the ABLE program, just wants to be a provider of information. And I had someone ask about being a parent of a minor, and I'll make sure I talk about that. If you have a child, you're a parent guardian of a minor, you may open the account for that child, and it's basically a minor-owned account. What I run into with some families is maybe they open the account for that child when they're 15 or 10, whatever the age may be, or 2 for that matter. But when the child reaches age of majority, 18 or 19, depending on your state, the thing to note is, will your child at 18 or 19 need a guardian, conservator, or power of attorney? If the answer is no, then the child who's now an adult will take ownership of the account. We just transfer ownership. A child who's now an adult owns their account. If the answer is yes, that this child will need a guardian, conservator, or power of attorney, then we would need, once that guardian, conservator, power of attorney paperwork is completed, it would need to be sent to us, and we would transfer the account over, and that guardian, power of attorney, or conservator becomes authorized individual and manages the account on behalf of the account owner. So many fantastic questions. I appreciate it. This is wonderful. And one thing I also want to point out, too, because I've had a couple questions about, I work with a lot of individuals who don't have a guardian, power of attorney, or conservator. They manage their own money, but, sometimes they need to ask a support person, whether it's mom or dad or whoever, to say, can you help me manage my finances? And absolutely that individual can sit down with you online and help you open the account and help you decide what makes sense for your financial situation. Like I always say, if I was to sit down and open up a new IRA, I may ask my dad, which IRA company should I use? How should I invest it? Now, that person that's guiding me, who's providing me financial advice, if it was my dad, he can't call in and ask about my account. We can't give out account balance and account information to anyone that is either not an account owner or an authorized individual, just because they don't have a legal reason to be given that information. But that doesn't mean they can't provide you support. They can't sit down at the computer with you, walk you through this, and help you. Obviously, we all sometimes need support, especially when it comes to finances. So definitely reach out to those that support you and have them help you. It's just only the account owner or the authorized individual can call the call center and get information on the plan. So many great questions. I love this. Any other questions? Make sure I'm getting.
Do we have any audio questions?
As a reminder, that's star 1 to ask a question over the phone lines. We currently have no questions over the phone lines.
Okay, well, if anyone wants to write any other questions in, because sometimes I know it is easier to just write them, please feel free to do so. I'm just going through here and making sure I've got all of them, but I think so. Well, again, if there's no more questions, I do appreciate everyone joining in. We've had, again, great questions. I love the audience participation with all the wonderful questions you've been asking, and I was excited to see so many people join and hopefully find this informative and hopefully walk away feeling a little more comfortable about what ABLE is, about our Enable program, and just feel more comfortable with these programs and how they can support you and your family. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask before we go on, or before we end, excuse me? Well, I did see someone ask about a credit card, and there are not a credit cards attached to ABLE programs. No ABLE program has actual credit cards attached to them. It just doesn't follow the rules of ABLE. So good question there if anyone else has that question. All right, I haven't seen any more new questions, so I think we're done. Thanks again, everyone.
This will conclude today's call. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.